In the heart of the green valleys of Kendo village, where the river whispered secrets and mango trees swayed like dancers, lived a girl named Naya. Just 9 years old, Naya had the wit of a sage and the energy of a morning rooster. Her mind was quick, her hands rarely idle, and her laughter echoed like music after a long silence. Her father, Baraka, a respected spice merchant known across neighboring villages, adored her more than life itself. My jewel, he would call her, his voice a melody of pride and love. Naya was no ordinary child. Teachers praised her brilliance, and villagers often said she was a gift from the ancestors. When she turned 14, Baraka, sensing that her light was ready to shine brighter, enrolled her in a reputable secondary school even though she was younger than her classmates. "You will soar higher than the mountains, my daughter," he told her, pressing his calloused hands on her head in blessing. But Baraka's trade took him far from home for long stretches, and he worried about her studies in his absence. Seeking help, he hired a private tutor, Mr. Tembo, a man whose eyes hid more than they revealed. And so began a storm Naya never saw coming. Naya's mother, Zalia, was known in Kendo for her striking beauty. Her skin was smooth like river stones, and her style was always impeccable. But beauty was not paired with warmth. Zalia had little interest in motherhood or marriage. She spent her days preening before the mirror and her nights drifting from one social gathering to another. Her heart belonged not to her home, but to the laughter and lights of the nightlife. She would leave early, wearing gowns that shimmered like the stars, and return only when the moon grew tired of watching. Naya, though hungry for her mother's affection, found herself alone more often than not, her voice echoing through empty hallways. One evening, Naya sat alone in the parlor, a small basin of cold water at her feet to keep her awake. She had gathered the courage to finally speak to her mother, to tell her something that had been weighing heavy on her chest for days. "Tonight, she'll listen," Naya whispered to herself. But Zalia never came. The stars disappeared, and morning crept in. Naya ran to her mother's room, only to find the bed untouched, the scent of perfume lingering like a ghost. Her heart sank. She swallowed her truth once again. Mr. Tembo came as usual that afternoon. He wore his signature dull brown shirt and round glasses that seemed too small for his wide, dark eyes. He greeted Naya with his practiced smile, one that never reached his pupils. As always, they sat across from each other at the small wooden table where Naya would solve arithmetic problems while he occasionally scribbled notes, but on this particular day, the air felt thicker. Mr. Tembo watched her longer than usual, his eyes drifting from her notebook to her face, and then lower. Naya noticed and shifted uncomfortably. "Is your mother home?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "No, sir," she replied without looking up. "She went out." His lips curled into a smile, a strange cold expression that sent chills down Naya's spine. "Let's take a short break," he said. Thinking he needed water or food, Naya rose and led him toward the kitchen. But the sound of a lock clicking behind her froze her in place. She turned to see Mr. Tembo blocking the doorway. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling. He moved closer, his breath sharp and heavy. "Don't scream," he whispered. "If you do, I'll make sure you're expelled from school." And then the nightmare began. Naya's world cracked open in that moment. Mr. Tembo's hands were cruel, his grip like iron. He pressed her down, silencing her sobs with threats and the weight of his body. When it was over, he stood and adjusted his clothes as though nothing had happened. "Go prepare food," he said coldly, and sat back at the table with the same fake smile he wore earlier. Naya's hands shook as she served him rice. She couldn't taste or smell anything. Her body ached, but it was the silence inside her that hurt most. Mr. Tembo finished eating, reminded her not to speak a word to anyone, and left. That night, Zalia returned earlier than usual. Hope leapt into Naya's chest. She ran to her mother's room, desperation coloring her voice. "Mama, I need to tell you something. It's about the tutor." Zelia cut her off sharply. "Don't start with excuses, Naya. You just want to avoid studying." Naya tried again, but her mother waved her away and slammed the door. Naya stood frozen in the hallway, the words crumbling in her throat like dried leaves. She crawled into bed and cried herself to sleep. That night, the moon watched over a girl swallowed by silence. Teachers whispered amongst themselves, wondering what had changed. Friends noticed her silence, but no one dared to ask. At night, the house became her cage. Mr. Tembo kept coming. Each time, he found a new excuse to stay longer, wait until Zelia left, and strike again. Naya stopped eating. Her body grew thin and weak. Her dreams turned to dark corridors, her voice trapped in echoing screams. She missed her father's arms, the way he called her my jewel. She wished, even prayed, for him to come home soon. But there was no letter. No knock. No footsteps. Only the slow, choking grip of fear that stole every inch of joy she once had. Her world dimmed, and the silence beneath her smile grew louder. She tried to write in her diary, but her hand trembled too much to hold a pen. No one could see the war inside her. No one knew that a storm was breaking her spirit, piece by piece. The sun was setting when Baraka returned home after nearly 3 months of trading across the border. His face was dusty, his clothes wrinkled, but his heart brimmed with longing for his daughter. As he approached the familiar stone path to his house, a strange stillness greeted him. No laughter. No footsteps. Just a heavy, unsettling quiet. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, a muffled, desperate sound. Baraka dropped his bag and sprinted toward the door. He kicked it open with the force of a lion. The sight before him turned his blood to fire. Mr. Tembo was pinning Naya down, her face soaked with tears, her hands pushing against him weakly. "Naya!" Baraka roared, his voice thunderous. Mr. Tembo jolted, scrambled to his feet, and lunged toward the window. But Baraka was faster. He reached him just as the man leapt, dragging him back by the collar. "You foul demon!" Baraka shouted. Naya sobbed uncontrollably in a corner, her body trembling. Mr. Tembo begged for mercy, muttering something about no one being home. But Baraka's fist did not listen to words. Rage consumed him, and he rained down blows. He dragged the broken man outside, determined to let the village know what evil had dared enter his home. Baraka dragged Mr. Tembo through the center of Kendo village, his bloodied shirt trailing behind him, one of his legs bent unnaturally from the fall. People gathered, their mouths agape, eyes filled with questions. Some gasped in horror, others clenched their fists in rage. "This man," Baraka shouted, his voice cracking with fury, "forced himself on my daughter. In my house." Gasps turned into cries of outrage. Mothers pulled their children close. Elders spat on the ground. The chief's guards, upon hearing the commotion, rushed to the scene and surrounded them. "Take him to the palace," one barked. The crowd followed, growing larger, each person whispering the same thing, "How could he?" At the palace, Baraka told the chief everything, Naya's torment, his long absence, and Mr. Tembo's wickedness. The chief's face turned dark with anger. He looked at Mr. Tembo, who sat trembling, unable to speak. "He must be punished," the chief declared. "No one shall harm a child and walk free in Kendo." That very evening, the guards dragged Mr. Tembo into the darkest cell under the palace. The people cheered. Justice had begun. But for Baraka, it was not enough. His daughter's tears still haunted him. And now, his fury turned toward someone else, Zelia. Baraka returned home with Naya, whose face looked like a wilted flower, quiet, drained, hollow. He helped her bathe and tucked her into bed, whispering, "No one will hurt you again, my jewel." When she finally slept, Baraka stormed into the master bedroom. There stood Zelia, before her mirror, applying rouge to her cheeks and golden powder to her eyelids. "Where are you going?" Baraka asked, his voice firm. "Out," she replied flippantly. "I've been indoors all day. I need fresh air." Baraka's fists clenched. "Fresh air, while your daughter drowns in silence. She tried to tell you. You ignored her." Zelia scoffed. "She's always dramatic." Before she could finish, Baraka swiped her makeup box off the table, sending powders and jewels scattering. "He raped her, Zelia. That man you let into our home. Repeatedly. While you danced." Zelia froze, her eyes wide. "What?" she stammered. "But she didn't. Because you never listened." Baraka thundered. "You chose parties over parenting." Zelia dropped to her knees, tears mixing with the golden shimmer on her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I was just. I didn't think." "Exactly," Baraka said coldly. "You didn't think. Now the whole village will know the truth." And with that, he dragged her outside. Outside, the village was still abuzz with the news of Mr. Tembo's arrest. As Baraka pulled Zelia into the square, people turned. Mothers who once admired her style now looked at her with scorn. "This is the woman who left her daughter to suffer," Baraka announced. Children pointed. Men looked away in disgust. Rotten tomatoes and dried cassava peels began to fly. "Leave Kendo," someone yelled. Zelia covered her face, sobbing. "Please, Baraka. Forgive me." But he shook his head. "You lost the right to be called a mother the day you chose parties over Naya." The village elders stepped forward. "It is better she leaves. Her presence brings shame." With a final glance, Baraka turned and walked away, leaving Zelia to gather her scattered belongings. That night, under the cover of stars, Zelia fled Kendo, no friends, no family, no home. Only regret. And behind her, Naya slept soundly for the first time in months, safe in her father's arms. Baraka never left Naya's side again. He paused his trade travels, choosing instead to open a small spice stall near their home. Each morning, he walked Naya to school, holding her hand like she was the most precious thing in the world. Teachers noticed the change. The girl who once sat silently, eyes empty, now raised her hand with confidence. Her smile returned, first slowly, like sunrise peeking over hills, then fully, bright and warm. But healing wasn't only in schoolwork. At night, Baraka sat with her, telling folktales, playing thumb games, even crying with her when the memories became too much. "You're not broken," he would say. "You are strong. You survived." Villagers came often with gifts, books, food, words of comfort. "Naya is Kendo's daughter now," they'd say. And she felt it too. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living. Baraka enrolled her in therapy sessions in the neighboring town, run by a kind old woman named Mama Teresia, who helped Naya put words to her pain. Slowly, she began to write again, her journal filling with poetry and hope. From pain came purpose. From silence came song. And the bond between father and daughter grew deeper than roots in a baobab tree. 3 weeks later, Mr. Tembo's trial was held before the royal council and the entire village. He was brought out in chains, face swollen, eyes dull with shame. Naya didn't attend, but Baraka stood tall, her voice flowing through his testimony. Witnesses were called, neighbors who saw Mr. Tembo often waiting for Zelia to leave, teachers who noticed Naya's sudden decline, and the midwife who examined Naya after the assault. The evidence was overwhelming. Mr. Tembo tried to deny it, but when the village scribe read aloud a letter Naya had written detailing every violation in poetic clarity, silence fell like a curtain. The chief shook his head, eyes heavy with sadness. "There is no place in Kendu for men who prey on our daughters," he declared. "Let this be an example." Mr. Tembo was sentenced to 30 years of hard labor in the iron mines, far from Kendu. As guards dragged him away, mothers covered their daughters' eyes. And though justice was served, the wounds left behind would take longer to heal. But in that moment, a message was clear across the village: our girls are not to be broken. Not in silence. Not in shame. Not ever again. Mama Teresia was not just a healer of bodies, but a mender of hearts. Her home, made of red clay and sweet lavender, was tucked beneath 2 mango trees. Naya would visit twice a week. At first, she barely spoke. But Mama Teresia never pushed. She offered Naya silence when she needed it, and stories when she didn't know what to say. She taught Naya breathing techniques, gave her a small talking drum and said, "When you can speak, beat the drum." The drum became Naya's voice. She played it every morning before school and every night before bed. She began writing again, letters to herself, to Baraka, to the girl she was before the pain. And soon, Naya started smiling, not just on the outside, but from deep within. Kendu's broken flower was blooming again. And everyone around her could see it. Months passed, and Naya blossomed. She became top of her class again, winning awards in mathematics and literature. The same villagers who once whispered in pity now whispered in admiration. "She's a phoenix," they said, rising from ashes. Baraka began receiving letters from organizations in the capital. Some had heard Naya's story through the council's reports and wanted to sponsor her education. But Naya had a dream of her own. One day, she sat with her father and said, "Baba, I want to help other girls like me. I want to be a lawyer. So no child ever goes unheard again." Baraka's eyes welled with tears. He pulled her close and whispered, "You already are a hero, Naya. But the world needs more like you." And so, they began preparations. A new chapter was coming, not just for Naya, but for every girl in Kendu who had ever felt silenced. Through pain, she found purpose. Through injustice, she found voice. Her scars became maps. And with each step forward, she carried not just her story, but the stories of many. Inspired by Naya's strength, the village began to change. A local law was passed requiring background checks for all tutors. A girls' safe club was established at the school, and Mama Teresia was asked to lead monthly workshops on emotional health. Baraka used his spice stall to create a scholarship fund for vulnerable children. Even the chief said, "This child saved us from our own blindness." Naya was awarded Daughter of the Year, and her name was etched on the village square stone. But she didn't bask in fame. Instead, she kept writing, kept speaking, and kept learning. She knew her journey was only beginning. Every time she passed her old classroom, she smiled, not because she had forgotten, but because she had survived. And now, she was leading others into the light. Years later, under the same mango tree where her story had first been whispered, Naya stood before a crowd. Dressed in a lawyer's robe, with her father by her side and Mama Teresia in the front row, she told her story, not in pain, but in power. "Silence," she said, "once buried me. But it also saved me. Because in the quiet, I learned to listen. To speak. To fight. And to forgive." The village erupted in applause. Naya smiled, her eyes meeting her father's. She was no longer a child hiding in corners. She was a voice for the voiceless. A light in the dark. A woman forged by fire, yet gentle as rain. And above her, the sky stretched wide and open, just like her future. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.